Hey, what's up, Kim? Happy Wednesday.
Hey, Zach, happy Wednesday, and we're back again.
I swear, this happens like at least once a week.
Is that it? No, I'm just kidding.
How you been?
I am good. How was your week?
Good, good, good. Yeah, wasn't really feeling particularly well yesterday, but feeling better, and I'm ready to get into the show today. Whoa, I did that last week too. Holy smokes. We have got a killer show for you guys tonight. We are going to talk about what is going on in Colorado, what it means for those drivers, but also what it potentially means for drivers around the rest of the country. We're going to talk about DoorDash being even less transparent now than they were before. And is Uber Eats hiding tips above $8 again? We're going to talk about it. Kim and I are also going to have a discussion on who tips the best between the rich, the middle class, and the poor. So we've got a hell of a show. We also have a special guest tonight. Kim, do you want to?
Absolutely. So, our special guest tonight, our very first guest on the show, he is a friend of both of us. He's a friend of the community. He has his own channel, a podcast. He does Driver Nation, which is a radio show on Friday nights. He does a rodeo roundtable on Thursday nights. So, without further ado, I am going to breathe in Steve from Rideshare Rodeo. Hi, Steve. How are you?
What's up, Steve?
Hey guys, how are you? Thanks for having me.
Hey, thanks for joining us.
Thank you so much for being here. So, we have you here tonight because we really wanted to dive into this Colorado bill that was supposed to pass, and it was supposed to be wonderful for all gig workers. And then all of a sudden, nope, didn't go through. So, we want to see like how is it affecting, or how does it affect the drivers in Colorado, and does it actually lay groundwork of what's going to happen for the rest of the country? So, why don't you tell us what the bill is and kind of what happened?
Yeah, I'm happy to. Um, okay, basically, and I've got a little, I went and got some update too on the other side of why this got shot down. So we're going to learn a little new stuff here tonight too. Um, but the bill that Kim is talking about and what they were pushing for is basically think before we get into like terms and numbers and what it's called, and think of it as a transparency and right to challenge wrongful deactivation bill for gig workers with no money attached to it like other states. Nothing about active time. You'll get a minimum 30, 50, $100 per active hour. No mileage fees. Nothing about money. Just that you're owed everything, that you're owed all the transparency. Otherwise, there's no way to make an informed decision. You need to see everything up front. And even those that maybe say they don't care or whatnot, I believe it's because they don't know they're owed that right. David and I have been fighting with the drivers' rights movement for a while, and I'm actually going to tie this into something that I'm going to use to my power. I talked to David about it yesterday. But what we're talking about here is, and we'll get to part of the reason why I think it didn't pass, was that one of the first, at least one of the first, if not the only, House ranking member of any state who was a gig worker and had no political experience at all prior to being elected, none, is Stephanie Vigil. And Stephanie is, she is, where did I put it here? Because I wanted to make sure I gave her the right plug here. Okay. Newly elected House Democrat, District 16, Stephanie Vigil. I've got some links that I gave these guys that they'll share at the right times. Stephanie's website's in there. After you hear this story, you're welcome to contact her. I made sure of that by emailing her today. Here's the thing, though. Stephanie was elected. This is her freshman season, like term as a House member with no political background, but she's done gig work. So she drafted a bill. It's 13 pages. I included that for them as well because it is actually not, it's pretty easy to read. It's not a lot of legalese. It's very straightforward. And we had her on the Paris show, and then I had her on my podcast and asked her some questions. And my two concerns were, is there any union, even not in this bill, but that handshake deals that were made. We'll get
Just
this
union
passed
involvement
through.
in general, right?
Yeah, we'll get this passed through, and then you'll do something for us. And then that was a big concern of mine. The other one was, where is the money that the politicians get? And I hate to be that point blank, but it's true. If there's no money to follow for the politicians, most likely a bill won't pass. But the bill we're talking about is Colorado Senate Bill 23098. Again, it was to provide transparency to gig workers, everything you need on every platform. DoorDash launched a multi-million-dollar campaign with human forces calling people, no robocalls, putting out things that were very, hey, if you want to if you better sign, you better click this if you want to keep your flexibility. Things that they weren't. Not only were they like bluffing, they were straight up lying. Like that wasn't in question. So, if that's what they want to do, that's their choice. But I mean, like,
So this is part of a video that I'm working on for my channel. And I actually jumped on there and I got on the internet and I found what they were doing and what they were sending out.
Yeah.
And to emphasize Steve's point, what they were communicating to drivers had literally nothing to do with what the bill actually was. They
didn't even provide a link to the bill
about drivers earning less money. No, they're just like, hey, sign something. You don't know what it is, but sign this paper because you're going to earn less money if this passes, which is bullshit.
Yeah.
Continue.
Yeah.
Sorry.
No, 100%. And you're right.
Before you continue, just because people are probably maybe coming here for the very first time, what exactly did the bill actually spell out that they were trying to pass?
So Senate Bill 23098 that was introduced by Stephanie had another drafter in the House who has more years experience, and it did get a senator to back it, which is what you need to get a bill on the House floor. Again, the transparency portion, pretty easy. Everything needed to be shown to the driver, where you're going, how many miles, complete pay. It also was going to self-correct tip baiting because your screenshots would be your proof of your pay. So if anything changed and money was taken away, you'd still be owed that. That's something that a lot of people didn't read into this bill. On the other side of the bill, they were demanding that customers have a full breakdown of every line item from these companies. The restaurant amount, the processing fee, the service fee, and how much the driver makes. Because let's be honest, most everybody in the country who uses these platforms has no clue that we're paid 10 cents to go take these orders.
Yeah. So I get into these head-to-head debates with customers all the time. They're like, I'm already paying for the service. It's already expensive. Shut up, do your job, the whole nine. Mm-hmm. But the ones who are actually willing to have an intelligent conversation about it rather than get ignorant, they're blown away. They're like, I just paid $15 in fees. And how is it that you're going to walk away with $250, $275?
Yeah.
So that, I mean, the only one that potentially loses with this bill was DoorDash and UberEats. Maybe. But not even then, because let's be real. We're talking about transparency, right? Ultimately, they've got customers who live out in the sticks. All right. Look, I've got my market goes 22 miles. All right. And I'm not going to drive 22 miles with the potential for there being a hidden tip. That ain't going to happen.
No. But
now,
just to play devil's advocate on the transparency thing, look, I've said before that, and I've had people disagree with me on this. Happened on the para panel yesterday. I believe, and Zach, we've talked about this. I know I talked about it with Kim too, that I believe every order would be taken if you were completely transparent. In fact, it might even help already what I don't like the AI that they're using determine which people are willing to take what orders and might distribute them in a quicker way.
So I'm not going to take a $4 order because I'm bored just sitting in a parking lot. Now, however, if I were multi-apping and that place was on the way, the restaurant was on the way to pick it up, and it was on the way to the other customer, sure.
Yeah.
Why not make an extra $4?
Right.
So, I mean, to your point, yeah, that's fair. So, what, in your opinion, Steve, what do you think this bill would have done for drivers? I mean, I know transparency, but like, what ultimately does that mean for drivers?
Well, okay, let's assume that there was no union involvement. And I'm not just union bashing you guys. This is not a place for the unions, and this bill would prove to be trash. One of the biggest takeaways I think this would have had is even if it had made it to a full House floor vote, which in a second I will explain, it didn't. And that killed the news cycle, which already was low because we have 10, 15 states trying to make minimum amounts on what you'll earn in active time and stuff. And dollars gets the national news. This isn't getting the national news. It needed it. It got in for a heartbeat. But who, in the big picture, who cares if we're not talking about money? Because we'll get to it. But in the end, even a bill that isn't going to bring in money to the politicians is still going to cost something. And that's where a big discrepancy here comes in. But the last part of the bill, to answer Kim's question, to finish it, is the transparency on both sides, but also the right to challenge a wrongful deactivation.
So ultimately, this bill was like literally designed to be full transparent and to really help the customer and the driver. The customer to see what their full transparency is and what the driver makes and what they're spending, but also it shows the driver, hey, this is what you're getting too, which is what I feel like as drivers we've been fighting for God only knows how long.
Forever.
I know, forever. So it's kind of hurtful that, not hurtful, but it hurts drivers that it didn't pass. And it like literally boggles my mind that DoorDash was so sneaky to start calling drivers and not telling them the real truth behind what the bill actually stood for because they were totally against it.
You know what? Actually, matter of fact, I might have the email here I can pull up. We don't have a slide of it, unfortunately. I didn't think to add that, but I believe I do have the actual email.
So, Steve, while he was pulling it up, the email, if this bill actually got passed, would this be a step in the right direction? And would it have possibly paved the way for transparency for other states?
So to the other states, yes, at least would have opened some eyes, and it would have got some of the dirty politicians to maybe back up a little bit. Now, are they all dirty on some level? Yeah, you can't play in politics if you're not going to get dirty. But how dirty are they? So a lot of them are pushing now for these crazy rules that we've talked about in other states that just are not going to happen. These pays that are not going to happen, and lots of legal battles. So it would have produced an option on, okay, look, they're happy being this, and this actually does meet the independent contractor criteria. So the bill was good. When I read it, I think I told you guys, I even told Stephanie on a live, so I'm not saying anything here that was mean. I like Stephanie. I've talked to her several times, and we emailed when the bill got shut down because I felt bad, and then we kind of emailed through that whole day, probably 4 times back and forth about other things too. But look, she came in and she wanted to pass this. She thinks this was her reason for going into politics. This was her first term. She made a bill that was supposed to get to the floor, and let's just jump to the part that'll really feel like a slap in everybody's face. And I don't. So this is where I say I have to say I'm an independent voter, registered. Now, can I vote in the prelims and decide who will be the running candidates for either party? No, that's there are some things that I don't get privy to because I'm an independent voter. But mostly when it comes to prelim, you're going to end up with the same 2 candidates anyway. So the voting isn't going to help because at some point the party has to get behind one. So I'm okay with that.
Yeah, so I kind of want to stop you for just a moment here. This bill had something unique behind it, and that was the person who actually wrote it. So typically when the government gets involved with gig work, you have some dude or lady in a suit who's been in politics for, 2 decades, right? And they don't know what we do. They don't understand what it is that we want. So for a change, we had somebody who has actually done the work that we do, trying to fight for drivers' rights.
Stephanie was in a pantsuit, just so you know.
Well, she could wear a pantsuit. My point is she's done the job. So, what happened to the bill, Steve?
Okay, so look, we all thought it would get to the floor and that it would get a vote. It should have. It had the 2 people that wrote it. You don't need 2 to write it, but you do need a senator to back it. They had that. Should have got to the floor. We all know that sometimes something crazy happens before what should happen, at least a vote on it. Who knows how it would have went? We don't even need to go there, because problem is 2 Democrats jumped ship. And that's why I was bringing up politics, because my independent, I think it's very important to not vote single party anymore. Vote on the people, because there are people in both parties that are a mess.
So these were 2 people who had originally pledged their support, if
yes.
my understanding is correct.
Yes.
So what got to them, and who the hell are they?
So first thing we should have noticed, they are in bed with huge big tech. Huge.
Shocker.
I mean, why didn't the media pick up on this? This will never get to the floor because these 2 are going to screw it up. And, just to not let them off the hook, these guys asked me to bring their names on, so I'm happy to do that, because Stephanie wants me to share this as much as I can, these 2 holdouts. So Kyle Mullica and Kevin Priola.
Find them on Twitter, people.
Yeah, find them on Twitter.
Be respectful.
Social bomb them. But yeah, be nice. But
be respectful.
Yeah, ask them questions. Be nice.
These people are here to serve us.
Yeah.
Okay. And they just completely went against our best interests.
Yeah. So they killed the bill before it hit the floor. So here's my thing. Did they know they were going to kill the bill that day when it was supposed to hit the floor? My guess is they did weeks before.
Yeah.
Because they also could have killed the bill before, but that could have caused an argument. Now we have a different situation, because even Stephanie, when we emailed that day, she's like, I learned, and I will come back much stronger the next time. Here's part of the problem that we need to talk about. So I did a little more digging, and the fiscal note that is attached to the bill. So for those you have to attach a fiscal note to your bill. And that's kind of, if nothing else, it does a quick summary, but it also gives how much you project out how much taxes it's going to require to get this bill done. And Stephanie had budget year 2023, 2024, total expenditures, 707,000, and then 24, 25, 708,000. Now, you can go through this, and again, it's a link that I gave these guys. They have it all. But here is an article that research finds Colorado bill on gig payments underestimates cost of state. So here's the problem. Stephanie the bill's fiscal estimate total expenditures, including 5.3 full-time equivalent employees required to pay the new legislation would be 707,000, 708,000 for the 25. So the same numbers I told you. The CSI, which is the Colorado, where to go? The Common Sense Institute. So the CSI estimated the total expenditure to be 2.8 million and 3.9 million. So that 2.8 is not even the total. That's for the first fiscal year, 3.9 for the second. Now, here's what I say to that. Stephanie doesn't have this training. She doesn't know this. But why wasn't somebody leading her better? Because this was a pretty, I'm surprised it took 2 Democrats to knock this bill down, because when you have that kind of a difference and you're not putting out any money, this thing would have lost on the floor anyway, but it would have got more attention. The bill is good and solid. What my question is, why weren't more people helping Stephanie with real numbers? Like here it said, they had here was like a difference that they had. And again, this is the Common Sense Institute is not funded by big tech or whatever, but in the fiscal note, the estimate was that there's 62,113 app-based drivers in the state of Colorado. The Common Sense Institute said it is 248,378.
So is it just me, or I feel like when it comes to transparency, and this could be Uber Eats, it could be DoorDash, I feel like they're like toddlers and throwing a temper tantrum because they don't want to show transparency. So they're throwing every tantrum that they possibly can, and they're stomping their feet. You're like, no, I'm not going to do it. No, I'm not going to do it. And then something like this happens. You're like, see, told you. Like, I feel like it's like a complete temper tantrum.
We just covered a story about how DoorDash is basically exploiting restaurants, or exploiting is the wrong word, but how they're threatening restaurants that they're going to rank them lower in the app if they
won't give them the
prices
badge.
Up. So
it's a badge they're going to give them.
Yeah. So they want the restaurants to be transparent. They just want to be the only ones who don't have to be transparent. So we have a slide of Uber Eats not being transparent. Again, pulling one of their old tricks. Let me get that up here, Kim.
Yeah, sorry.
So, for those of you who drive for Uber Eats, you are all too familiar with this screen. This is a payout screen on the Uber Eats app. It says your earnings are $18. The estimate for this trip was $11, including an upfront tip. And the customer tipped even more after delivery. Nice. Except they didn't. That was a hidden tip.
It's back. Dun, dun, dun.
It's back. So we shook this for a while. Uber Eats was showing, depending on the market, the entire payout or most of the payout. And now we're back to this.
See, I feel like in my market, it fluctuates. Like there's sometimes they show full transparency, and then there's other times that they're like, nope, it's going to be a hidden tip today. Like it's not a steady, I'm going to show full transparency, or it's a steady, I'm going to show a hidden tip. It's very, at least in my market, all over the place, and it could be by order, and it could even be by day.
Yeah, so I'm seeing something different here. They're just hiding anything above $11 again. And we enjoyed 3 or 4 months of tip transparency, basically. I think I saw one order in 3 months that had a hidden tip on it. And now they're back to this garbage. So we had talked about this a little bit earlier, but I want to kind of analyze how hidden tips affect drivers, but also how they negatively impact customers. So like I was talking about, my market is 22 miles roughly from end to end. And there's customers who live kind of out in the sticks who know that they live out in the sticks. And so they want to ensure that the driver's adequately compensated for their time. But that person may have tipped $20, but guess what? That order is going to show me $11, and I'm damn sure not about to drive an hour for $11. I'm not going to take that risk. So now that customer gets screwed. Yeah. Go ahead. Sounds like you had something to say.
No, I guess I feel like with Uber Eats, I came on Uber Eats and probably 3 or 4 years ago that they only showed base pay when I first started. They'd actually never really showed the tip until an hour after. And that's when you actually showed, like, you knew exactly what you were getting. So I guess I come from, well, this is like the most they've ever given us. So like when hidden tips actually came, it was like, oh, okay, well, the payout's good to begin with because it's $11, $10, and, so on and so forth. So I never really... It never really bothered me as much as DoorDash did, if that makes any sense, because they were hiding it over certain threshold doesn't make it right. No, not whatsoever. But it didn't affect me as much as DoorDash did.
Well,
but I
it
still
did affect
think,
you.
how did it affect me?
Well, because you're out there doing the work, right? You could have potentially missed thousands of dollars over the years. Like what you're talking about right there is exactly why I didn't drive for Postmates, because they didn't show any upfront tip information. And I'm damn sure not going to do the work to get screwed later.
I don't know. I guess, like I said, it just never really bothered me, because when I got a hidden tip with UberEats, it was like I was getting a $10 tip. I was getting a $20 tip. I sometimes got a $30 tip, versus like DoorDash, they hide like 25 cents. And you're like, why are you hiding 25 cents? That's absolutely ridiculous. So sometimes for me, like the pay didn't really make a difference to me on Uber Eats, just because their payouts at the time that Uber Eats was good in my market was 10 times better than DoorDash was.
So I get what you're saying, but I've also seen hidden tips. I've seen Uber hide. I think I had an order once where Uber hid 1 cent for me. Like 1 cent. It happens. But I mean, I disagree with you. It definitely does affect the driver. And in the long run, it really affects the driver. But absolutely it affects the customers, because they end up waiting. And then the driver who inevitably ends up accepting it because it got doubled, or, some new driver who's willing to spend an hour and a half driving for $11 is like, oh yeah, I guess I have to do this. So I'm going to go take my happy ass, go pick up this cold ass order and get a shitty rating. So it affects everybody. It's not just, and then on top of that, matter of fact, the companies end up refunding those orders because they just didn't give the drivers the transparency in the first place.
Yeah, I definitely think, though, that the customer who thinks that, hey, I'm going to give this driver, out of the kindness of my heart, $25, and you know what, I'm gonna get my food hot and warm because I just tipped my driver a really great tip. At least in their head, I'm tipping it. But then the driver only sees, okay, well, it's $12, it's going 5 miles. Do I do it? Do I not do it? But if they actually showed that the order was going to be, I'm making this up, $27, the customer would have gotten the benefit of tipping the way that they were supposed to and getting the service that they actually were trying to request by giving a higher paying tip. So that's where transparency really comes in. It works both ends with drivers and customers.
Can I weigh in here before I have to go?
Yeah.
Because I want to produce a solution, and then I want to leave, and I want to leave on that note. I want to leave on the note of like, dude, check this out. And I want you all to think about it, because I've actually broke this down in my head. What would be so wrong with a platform that charged restaurant prices, that charged a processing fee and a service fee that between the two kept the companies profitable, kept the servers running? We know that they don't have FF&E and assets and things like that, so there's not a lot of that kind of issue. But then on the last page, when you get to your order is complete for food delivery, okay, your order is complete. It's this much with the service, with the processing, and here's the food, and here's how much it costs. Now, do you want it in 40 to 60 minutes? Push here, you'll pay your driver $8. You want it in 30 to 40? Push here, it'll be 12. You want it in 20 to 30 minutes? Push here, it'll be 15.
That would actually not be a bad idea.
My concern with that, though, is the tips would completely evaporate. So we'd still run into the issue of,
well, that's why you inflate the number. Because like me, look, most of the I don't think any of us order food enough that do these apps. But once in a while, and when I was in Vegas, I did a couple times. They actually did have one way to upcharge. But I think if you had multi-tiers and said your driver is paid according to how fast, it almost is allowing the customer to have a cheap way if they can wait. And it's also saying, hey, if you're really hungry and you want to pay the driver more, we can get that out too.
I don't know. Just going back to the Colorado bill just for like a half a second, Steve, before you even leave. To me, this bill just really shows at least in my opinion, that these companies, DoorDash, UberEats, whatever company, really just don't give a crap or a damn about the drivers that are out there. They're literally in it for themselves to make the most amount of money. I get it, they're a company, but this really truly shows that they don't really care about the drivers and what the drivers go through or what they're actually seeing.
So I was reading Sergio's comments, and then also I'll leave it on this because he was like, "Hey, did I hear back from the sellouts?" He's asking me if I heard back from the two that we were talking about. He's been trying to get in touch with them too. No, Sergio, I have not. But the last thing that I wanted to say on the Colorado bill is, what do I do now? Because I'm a citizen here. So finally, I get to use the driver rights movement that David and I were doing, and that some other para members were doing all last summer. We got 60,000 national signatures saying oddly, the exact same thing as the bill. We deserve complete transparency up front. We deserve a right to challenge a wrongful deactivation. We have 60,000 national signatures. About 4,300 of those are from Colorado. So am I going in there and saying, I run a podcast and a YouTube channel, we talk about all this stuff, I'd really like to get your side of this? Yes, I am. But if they try and pull, I have over 4,000 constituent Colorado voters who have signed on to what I need to talk to you about, and there's 60,000 nationwide. Now, can you make the time for me?
Yeah.
And if they can't, I will make everything public.
So, Steve, I want to kick one final question to you. So can we highlight Charmander's second to most recent comment? How does hiding tips benefit Uber?
Yep.
So, Steve, I want you to answer that from your perspective, if you don't mind.
Well, I mean, look, DoorDash had a formula on how they were stealing tips. We talked about it last week. I mean, it was, oh, you wanted all your tips. It was like they just were like, they were aware. It's like they were like, oh, you're going to call us out on that, because they were saying that, look, if your tips don't meet or if they go over this amount, then you're not going to get them all. And what I say to that is these iron curtains that exist that don't let us see things. And all of these apps have different ways of being non-transparent. It's not like they all follow one style and they all do it the same way. They're all a little different. They're all moving pieces all the time. But as far as Uber, to be honest, Uber's become very easy to tip bait on again now too. And I remember a year ago talking tip baiting, and people were like, I've heard of it, but I never have seen it in my markets. Never happened to me. That's not the case anymore. Most people I know have been tip baited. And to be honest, like, how do you know you won't be tip baited? How does hiding tips benefit Uber? Because Uber can reallocate those tips to up the price of an order. Uber can steal those tips. I believe that Uber buys into things like VTOL, that was going to be here by 2025. You guys don't even know what it is because it's not real. It's vertical and takeoff technology landing. They're not a technology company. For years, they said it'd be here in 2025. What'd they do? They said they'd be landing on the rooftops of every building in LA. And instead, what do we get? A helicopter in New York. One.
So I want to answer this question from my perspective really quick. And then, Kim, if you've got some thoughts, let's jump in there. So my perspective on why Uber hides tips, and probably DoorDash as well, but I'll answer it specifically from Uber, is drivers think that they could potentially make more money. So they see a fancy restaurant pop up. They see a steakhouse or a sushi restaurant or something like that, Italian joint. And they're like, this place is known to have good tips. So it's showing $11. They're like, that's the hidden tip indicator. So they go, they do the order. They spend 20, 30 minutes on it. And there was $1 hidden. There was 25 cents hidden, whatever the case may be. Sure, they might get lucky and they might have gotten a $50 order. But that's just my perspective. They're trying to keep drivers guessing, and they're trying to. It's like that shot of dopamine that drivers want, because when they're right, that feels so good. When they predict an order that had a hidden tip and they're correct, that's such a good feeling. But when they're wrong, it's maddening.
I think
That's just
you're hitting on something important too, Zach, and I know you guys will probably discuss it because I saw some of the topics and heard what you guys are going to be talking about. But to be honest, like I know that all of us, the three of us, and probably most people in the chat, we hate gamification of these apps.
Yes.
Don't make me jump through a hoop. If I set myself on fire, don't give me $5. Don't. This isn't a circus. Set some rates and let's live by them. But here's the thing. So if we, if you're concerned about these apps not being straightforward with you, then you're thinking correctly, because they're not straightforward with you. They never have been. And they're constantly, instead of spending the little bits of money to fix the issues that would resolve a lot of conflict in a lot of states' legislation and other things, instead they saddle up to cities. They, become so involved that it would be hard to kick them out. And to be honest, like you said before, they would rather fight transparency. I do believe that all the orders would still be taken. I do believe that the overflow of drivers, oversaturation, would die off a little bit, though, because I believe a lot of these people are into the gamification. I'm not, you're not, Kim's not, but I believe a lot of people are.
Dude, I just want to accept an order and know how much I'm going to get paid.
Right, but I think it's that, like you were saying, like, okay, dude, I've had a crappy day. Maybe this is a good steak restaurant, and they ordered 4 steaks. Like, this could be my $50 tip.
Yeah.
Like, dude, you can't do that. You can't.
So Sergio said, Steve, let me know when these two sellouts get back to you. We would love to hear their excuse. I would love to see you honestly do an interview with these two, just to get what their perspective is and understand their reasoning behind shooting it down. But just real quick, I just want to give my 2 cents on the whole Uber Eats and hiding tip thing. Is, I really believe, and I think Steve and I have talked about this before, that these companies, DoorDash, Uber Eats in particular, they play with your mind. They play with your psyche. They play with your, they get you thinking in a different way as a driver, and how far they can push a driver to do what they need and what their own agenda is. But with hiding tips, and I think this goes even for DoorDash and even for Uber Eats, if they had full transparency, we would have drivers like myself, I would be guilty of it as well, sitting around, because we do it already this way, and cherry pick our way until the best of the best orders came in, and then none of the other orders would ever get taken. I think it's their own psyche way of getting drivers to take all the orders and getting them delivered. It is wrong. It is horrible. But I just think that they're playing mind games in order to get orders delivered.
Personally, I don't care if those orders sit.
I really am bouncing out, but I do have to say this to Sergio's comment about. So I want to mention their names one more time, and there's one more thing I want to mention too about these two holdouts when he's talking about who these people are: Kyle Malika and Kevin Priola. By the way, and then I'm out. Kevin Priola was an elected Republican and changed his party affiliation the first year in office. I didn't, to be honest. I've dealt with politics for a long time. I didn't even know you could do that.
I was gonna say, you can do that? I didn't know you could do that.
So, I mean, it's almost like he knew, okay, I can get elected this way. I have the votes over here, but really I'm in these guys' pockets, so I'll have to find a way to. I mean, this is like getting to be so creative with politics that it wasn't bad enough. And to that, I'm out, guys. Thank you for having me.
Steve, thank you so much for being here tonight. I really appreciate it.
Real quick, before you shove off, Steve, tell people how they can find you.
RideshareRodeo.com. You guys can find me here on YouTube, Rideshare Rodeo. You can, and then we do all kinds of shows on here, but I do drop a podcast. I dropped my 221st one yesterday. Over That's 3 awesome. Years now. And I'm going to start bringing them over to YouTube as well, but you can find them anywhere: Spotify, Apple, Amazon, any podcatcher in the world has the Rideshare Rodeo podcast.
So Steve is an excellent resource. If there's ever something going on in the gig economy and I need a quick answer, Steve is the person that I reach out to, either Steve or Sergio. So fantastic resource. Check them out. Rideshare Rodeo. Steve, thank you for joining tonight, brother.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Appreciate you,
Thanks,
man.
Steve.
See you guys.
So, Kim, it's not just Uber Eats that
It's not.
is playing games again.
It's
So,
not.
DoorDash is getting even less transparent now than they were before. So, for those of you who are listening to us rather than watching, there's a screenshot up right now, and it's just a generic, you would press like directions, it's to get you to the restaurant. There's a change though, and you no longer see this person's name.
A lot of drivers are probably like, I don't understand, like, what does the name actually really matter? To me, it matters a lot. I don't know about to anybody else. Let me know in the chat. Does the customer's name matter to you when you're driving for DoorDash?
So we'll let a few people answer that. I've got a couple of scenarios where, so this one you and I will agree on. I have a little block book, as I call it, my black book for people that I don't mess with, and I've got their name in there. Like they've got the I've got the street written down and the name, and if that name comes up on that street, that order is getting unassigned. But now you're not seeing it until you've already arrived at the store. So if you wanted to unassign it, you've already wasted your time and gas money, and you are not going to get half pay.
Yeah, I actually completely agree with that, because for me, like, I mean, I like knowing my customers' names, because you get to know the really crappy customers that really screw over drivers all the time, and it never stops because their orders keep getting delivered, so they keep doing it the same way over and over and over again, until as a driver you're like, why am I still taking this person's order? And just to give you an example, I had a customer, and I was telling Zach about this, I think a couple of days ago. I had a customer who always ordered $150 worth of food from a diner. And until I caught on to their game, I would be a sucker, because you think $150, oh my God, this is going to be a fantastic order. You deliver it. And granted, it was across the street to an office building from the diner was delivering to, so no hardship. But the tip is always $5. Whether it's $100, whether it's $300, it's always a $5 tip. And ever since then, whenever her name like pops up, I'm like, nope. I mean, granted, now I can look at the map and know exactly who it is just by looking at the map, and you get good with that over the years and knowing your area, but that name is important to me.
Yeah, but part of the problem with that though is that the map doesn't always load right, and they've screwed with it a lot. The map we see today isn't the map we saw 6 months ago, and I've had it not display pretty much anything. Like I've just seen like a blob, like no houses, no buildings, no roads, just a blob of Google Map or Apple Map or whatever they use. So, I mean, even then, like I get your point, but it's not a surefire thing, which is why ultimately we need the customer's name. But Kim, let me ask you this. Do you think that you would be more likely or less likely to unassign an order if you drove 5 miles to a restaurant, only to realize then that it's one of your nightmare customers?
That's a good question.
Are you unassigning or are you keeping it?
I would how far of a distance is it? If it's only going like a mile, say I travel 5 miles to the restaurant, it's only going 1 or 2 miles past the restaurant, I probably would just keep it, just because I just wasted the time to get to the restaurant, and I already wasted my gas. Everything's wasted. I might as well just follow through with the order. I wouldn't be happy about it by any means, and I would probably be mumbling under my breath the entire time, but I probably would just go ahead and go along with it. I hardly, honestly, ever, I'm like one of those drivers that I hardly ever cancel orders unless like it is like a really like, okay, I really need to cancel this order.
What's your completion rate?
98%.
What? Why?
Well, you have to keep it at 95 for large order program.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
But for the most part, like it's like a restaurant has to be like really bad for me to cancel an order.
So before you were LOP, what did you try to keep it at?
90 and above. I usually hovered around like 90, 91, somewhere around there.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, I guess that's kind of in line with. I think I'm at like 89 right now or something, 87. So, yeah. So anyway, it's just another case of less transparency, and I've read a couple of opinions about this online, and there's some people who are just as displeased with it as Kim and I are. And then there's a couple people who are like, yeah, so what? It's not a big deal. But I want to remind you, we're contractors, right? We're not their employees. We do not have to put up with this shit. Like, drivers are literally getting killed because they don't have all of the information.
Yeah,
It is not the time to be.
Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but I think that's my
okay.
biggest issue I have with this. It's not so much the customer, but over the past month, how much have they hidden from drivers? They're now hiding item counts. For a couple weeks, they were hiding the plus symbol, so you didn't know whether, at least in my area, you didn't know whether it was a diamond plus. You went into it with like a blind. Is it going to go up? Is it not going to go up? I don't know. There's no plus signs. Now they're hiding the customers' names. Like, how much more? They're hiding tips. Like, how much more untransparent can they actually possibly be? Like, it's just like another thing on top of another thing on the top of another thing that they're keeping from us, and that's the part I have a hard time with.
Careful, Kim. Don't say that too loud. Don't ask that question too loud, because pretty soon we're gonna get an update where it's like $5.50, and then you just hit accept. You're not told where you're going. You just follow the GPS and hope that the restaurant doesn't suck.
Yeah.
Actually, matter of fact, Uber kind of did that. They're kind of starting to do that again, but we've done that tirade. So, so yeah. SB Rides 805. I use Para. Can red flag bad orders. I'm right there with you. Yeah. So I use Para as well. I think it's a fantastic app, and I am all for anything that provides the driver any kind of additional transparency. So the flagging feature is fantastic. So, and matter of fact, I don't just use that for for flagging good or bad customers. I also use it for like difficult addresses. Like, I've had good customers that I flagged because their driveway is like that, and I drive a standard. So, sorry, I wanted to quickly address that. So, Kim, we had an interesting article that we were discussing, and it essentially was asking who tips the best. Is it the rich, the middle class, or the poor? So Kim and I are going to have a discussion about this. If you guys would please type your opinions in the chat, or if you're catching us on the replay, leave a comment. Let us know who you think the best tippers are, the rich, middle class, or the poor. Kim, do you want to start, or do you want me to?
I'm going to start. The article is not here, but that's kind of what the basis of our discussion about this is there was an article that was posted that really said there were drivers conflicting, saying that some drivers think that they stay around certain restaurants and also certain neighborhoods because they are rich neighborhoods and therefore give bigger payouts and bigger tips. There are other drivers who are actually saying that no, rich people don't tip anything, and that the middle class is the ones who actually are the best tippers. And it was a big, huge debate on who are the best tippers when it comes to food delivery. So that's the basis of this discussion. So I have my own opinions, and I'm sure, Zach, you have your own opinions. So
boy, do I.
So I'll let you go first on this one as people are getting their votes in.
Okay, so I am going with the poor, followed by the middle class. So I frequently find myself in, I don't want to say like bad parts of town or anything like that, but I do find myself in kind of cheaper apartment complexes and stuff quite often. And I almost never find myself in the wealthiest parts of the city. Almost never. And, like, don't get me wrong, like, I have been there, a small handful of times, but we're talking that's like quite literally like a 50-to-1 ratio for me. We have an area in my neighborhood called the Wood Hood, or in my market. It's like Alderwood, Maplewood, just a bunch of streets that end in wood, and it's known as the Wood Hood. It's not a bad area, but it's also not the nicest area. And I find myself in the Wood Hood as opposed to an area called Edgemore, which has the $5-6 million houses that are overlooking the ocean. I've been there maybe 3 times. I've been to the Wood Hood hundreds, hundreds. So, and then of course the middle class can kind of go either way, but they're in the middle for me. The middle class is in the middle. Kim, what you got?
Okay, so I feel like my area is unique because I deliver to some of the richest neighborhoods in New Jersey and sometimes even the country. So I might have a little different approach to this. Some of my biggest payouts do come from these McMansions and these rich neighborhoods, and they pay really well. But I also get really bad tips from these neighborhoods too, because the old saying, the rich don't get rich by giving away their money.
Mm-hmm.
So it's kind of the same concept, but the same thing with middle class neighborhoods. And I get some really good tips, I get some not good tips. I really think people are going to tip whatever they're going to tip, whatever they want to tip. I don't honestly think it really has to do with rich or medium class. I personally, as a driver, I base myself off of the restaurants that I pick up from, and that's usually how I base my personal tips. And
Yeah.
as a driver, like, I park myself in front of like the really high end sit down restaurants. I'm in a downtown area, and that's how I'm going to base my tips. I don't really base it on rich versus middle class, because people are going to tip whatever they're going to tip.
Yeah. So you guys can hate me in the comments for saying this all you want, but the poor people are poor because they don't spend their money wisely. So they buy frivolous shit that they don't need. So in my opinion, that's what makes them some of the best tippers, because they're not careful. They're not as careful with their money. So I want to kind of touch on something you were talking about. So my waiting place is in a nicer area. So it's just a bunch of like high end restaurants right there. However, in like that 3 mile radius, I've got really, really nice homes, like, $1 million homes. But then I also have, $1,400 a month apartments, which for my area is like nothing. So I could go in either direction there. I could go up the hill to the rich folks, or I could go the other direction and get some of the lower rent type of places. And I definitely make more in one area versus the other. So, but let me ask you this, Kim. If you had to pick one, the rich versus the poor, who are the better tippers?
For me, the rich.
Oh, no, 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 no. So, I mean, is there something in the water in New Jersey that's like making your rich people special? Because like, I don't.
I think there is, because I get some pretty amazing payouts. I mean,
Mm,
granted, I do have the large order program, but that's where I'm seeing all of my DoorDash money is coming
yeah.
from. Unfortunately, like, every single LOP order that's over $100 usually ends up being anywhere from $15 to a $30 order at the end when everything's said and done. The other week, I got a catering order and it was a $70 tip. I had another one the other week where I delivered to probably a $15 million home, and there was a $70 tip, and the guy was so incredibly nice, and we got to talking and gave me an extra $50 in cash. So
Jeez.
for me, the rich neighborhoods really do pay well, but like I said, I still get some really great tips in middle class too. So I do think it's the area I'm in. Like I said, I'm super blessed with where I deliver to.
Yeah.
So
It sounds like it, because I think that. So let me ask you this then: what do you think the best strategy would be for drivers, right? Because I mean, there's some difference in opinion here on who tips better and who tips like shit. So what do you think the best strategy for drivers would be if they're listening to both of us? You saying the rich tip better than the poor, and I say the poor tip better. What should they do? Should they be positioning themselves in maybe areas that aren't quite as nice, or should they be, in very affluent areas?
I think that they should base it off of the restaurants, not the neighborhoods. I think that the first step is to really find out what restaurants can produce the higher ticket subtotals. And granted, we don't see subtotals any longer. On another thing DoorDash is hiding. There you go. We don't see subtotals anymore, but if you know your restaurants, you can kind of guess it in your head just based off of the dollar amounts. And if you ever want to know, if you're new to doing this, go on to UberEats, go on to DoorDash, and kind of do a mock order for yourself on some of these restaurants just to see what the average dollar amount per plate is. And then you get an idea of subtotals of these restaurants in your areas. Just a little, tip of information. But I'd say go by the restaurant, know kind of what your subtotals kind of are, and then base it off of the neighborhoods you're delivering to. Do your own market research. I say this all the time. Do your own market research. You're not going to get it off the bat right away, but you start to see patterns of the neighborhoods you're delivering to, and you'll get better and better at it.
Yeah. So I think ultimately that's a very good point. Drivers should always be fluid. The market is always changing. If you're sitting in one spot for 3 hours, not seeing any orders, then yeah, pick up and move, obviously. But again, for me, like, my waiting place is perfectly positioned between some like upper class neighborhoods and, some kind of lower middle class neighborhoods. So I kind of get the best of both worlds. I give myself the ability to be in both areas quickly. So, and let me tell you, the pricing isn't really all that different on the apps between a nice restaurant and fast food. Like, you might only have a few dollar difference per entree.
I don't agree with that.
Really?
Yeah, I totally don't agree with that. I have a steakhouse that you can get a porterhouse steak at $120 per porterhouse steak versus a Big Mac at $15. So to me, you can't even compare the two.
Well, yeah, but like you're talking about one specific restaurant.
No, but a lot of the restaurants in the area that I'm at, like the average plate per person is usually just $25 or up. So you're talking if you get 4 plates of something, maybe an appetizer that's 5 items, already the order is over $100.
So, okay, yeah, that's fair, but here's the thing though. Go on the apps and try to order a Big Mac meal and see how much that bastard will cost you.
Oh, it's absolutely freaking ridiculous.
To my point, like, we're really, okay, assuming they start at $25, I understand that they, start at and go up, right? But if they start at $25, that's really not that drastic of a difference for, like a sit down meal versus freaking McDonald's.
There's no way I will ever position myself in the middle of a dinner shift in my fast food areas, McDonald's, Wendy's. There's no way in any God's creation that would ever happen. Like, if I'm going to spend my time during lunch and dinner, it's going to be in the area that I normally do, because it is restaurants and it's sit down restaurants. I reserve the Wendy's and fast food for like the mid-morning or early morning rush that people are getting, those little things here or there, or at the end of the night when I want to get like a quick order before I go home. Other than that, I stay away from fast food.
So can we highlight Ride Shift Dude's comments? I didn't even have to do the transition for this one. He was kind enough to do that. Kim, can we drop the very next slide?
Absolutely. That was a good transition. Thank
Like,
you.
literally our next talking point. Oh no. Okay, I guess it wasn't the very next slide.
There you go.
So, you guys, real quick. So Mother's Day is Sunday. That reminds me, I gotta
Happy
tell my
Mother's
mom.
Day to all the moms out there and all the dads who are moms if you're a single dad out there. So
And
happy Mother's Day.
Happy Mother's Day to you. And
Thank you.
I'm looking forward to doing something with my mom this weekend. So I'm fortunate to have her in the area. So it's we'll get together. But real quick, so if you are looking for something nice to do for your mom for Mother's Day, you can score 25% off of a Grubhub order if you have Amazon Prime. So we'll see if that's going to increase the number of orders on Mother's Day. But if this were okay, all right, Kim, if this were DoorDash or Uber, I could see it making a difference. But it's Grubhub.
I hate this. It's going to sound so mean, but who's ordering from Grubhub?
Like, it's Grubhub. It's not. Yeah, it's not DoorDash.
They're trying to push the whole Prime membership. Like, you have to have signed up for Grub. First of all, you have to have signed up for Grubhub through Prime in order
Yeah.
to
So
get this.
you gotta. Yeah. So and it has to be a new Prime membership, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes, it does.
Okay. Yeah.
But
So
the reason why I actually wanted to talk about this was because Grubhub said Mother's Day is the second busiest holiday of the year.
So I saw that as kind of weird, but now I'm reading a couple of comments in here, and people are saying that they do pretty well on Mother's Day.
I think, I mean, I haven't worked the past two official Mother's Day just because I'm a mom. I'm not going to work on Mother's Day. But the Saturdays and Fridays leading up to Mother's Day, because people just don't celebrate Mother's Day on Mother's Day. People still celebrate on the Saturdays and Fridays before Mother's Day leading up to Mother's Day. So the Saturdays, if you're not a top dasher or you need to schedule, like, get on a schedule, because they are busy as all heck. And not only that, but brunch on Mother's Day is really big. I did brunch on Mother's Day. I think I worked like a really early morning just to see what orders were coming in. I think it was to Mother's Day, and it was busy and the orders were really good. So
let me ask you this, Kim. Let's say that drivers are out Mother's Day. They've had a great week up until that point, and they've made at least $2,000. Should Uber Eats hold anything above $2,000 that they make from that driver?
heck no, they shouldn't. That's absolutely ridiculous.
Let's get that slide up there. So apparently this is a thing. I did not know that. If you earn more than $2,000 in 1 week on Uber, they will cash out up to $2,000, and then you have to wait until the next week to get the rest of that money. So, Kim, had you ever heard of this before?
I have never heard of this until I was going. I think I found this on Reddit or Facebook. I can't remember which one it was. And I'm like, they did what? So then I started researching it, and Uber Eats, if you make more than $2,000 a week, which, first of all, if you do that, applause, you're a rock star for getting that much money in a week.
Yeah.
But they hold it until the next week. They only allow you to cash out $2,000. So I was thinking, in my opinion, I'm like, what? I earned that money. Like,
Yeah.
how are you holding my money hostage because I made more money for you? Like, that's absolutely ridiculous to me.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I agree completely. So I think that there's kind of a fundamental distrust of the gig apps anyway. As we all know, drivers get deactivated and they don't always get their money. And even then, like, even if they do, they frequently have to have lawyers and shit involved. So what happens though if that driver earns $2,100 1 week, $2,400 the next week, right? Are we just like lagging behind? Like, at what point does that catch up? Because if that's how much you're earning, and they're only cashing out $2,000 every week.
But
You
what's
could potentially, yeah, go ahead.
let's say, what's the incentive of keep making more money? Like, if you're
Yeah.
if you're a really good Uber Eats driver, and I'm assuming, I don't know, I've never made that much on Uber Eats before, but say like you're like this expert Uber Eats driver, and like that's how much you're making. Like, I just, what's the incentive to keep on going? If you're going to keep my money, why am I going to ever make that much money ever again on Uber Eats? Wouldn't you
Yeah.
like jump ship and go to another gig app at that point? Because why would I even do that?
Yeah. So the one thing on Uber Eats though is you can cash out six times a day. Did they change it to 4?
I thought it was 5, but I could be wrong.
Okay. You can cash out somewhere between 4 and 6 times a day on Uber Eats. And so, I mean, really, like ultimately, if you're making that kind of money and it's the fee that's stopping you from doing it, just write it off on your freaking taxes. You're ultimately protecting yourself from deactivation at that point. Like straight up, do not leave money in your driving accounts. Those things are not FDIC insured.
Yeah, no. First of all, I would give any advice to any driver. I don't care how much the fee is. I think DoorDash is the highest fee amongst all the apps. I think Grubhub is 50 cents. Uber Eats, if you have the Uber card, it's free, but I think it's up to 80 something cents now if you don't have the Uber card. I can't even remember. But
It's 85,
whatever
I believe.
okay, 85. Whatever the fee is, suck it up and cash out every single day.
Keep track of it.
I do not trust these gig companies with my money whatsoever. There's no way I am entrusting my money, that much money, in the hands of anybody but my bank account.
Yeah. Yeah, that money is not insured. And there's always something written somewhere tiny in the contract that says that they can keep your money. So, yeah, no, you're better off to just not deal with it. I know paying the fees sucks, but seriously, just keep track of it and ask a CPA if you could write it off. So, I would call it business insurance personally. That's a small price to pay to ensure that you actually get the money you worked for.
Is the 50 cents really at this point gonna make or break you? So what, it's 50 cents, even if it's 7 days a week, you're talking $3.50 for an entire week if you cashed out every single day. Granted, DoorDash at $2 a day, that's $14, so it's a little bit more pricier, but that's 2 orders on DoorDash. To me, just suck it up and keep your money. I don't trust these companies.
Yeah, I don't trust them at all. So we've got a couple funnies for you. These are definitely not family friendly. If
Yeah,
you
so
have,
I was gonna say, if you have young kids or anyone around, yeah.
not good for little ears. So this was posted on the Amazon Flex Drivers subreddit. And this sign says, attention, sex worker watch area. All vehicle plates reported.
I personally love how there's like cameras literally right above it too.
So to me, it looks like there's 2 things up there. I'm not sure if the one that's on top, the small one, is a camera or not, but to me it looks like the one down below that is actually a speaker. So I mean, hey, maybe the hookers are like getting down, they're dancing and stuff on the block, shaking what they got and having a good time. So I mean, this sign is kind of bullshit. Like let's be real. I'm sorry. I shouldn't get hassled by the cops just because I park somewhere, right? Like especially if I'm delivering an order, like don't screw with me.
That is like a TikTok waiting to happen. Sorry, a DoorDash driver, you are being arrested
Right?
because you parked in front of a sign.
How do you explain that to your significant other? Honey, they thought I was after the whores again. Like that, terrible.
So
But
beware
you know what?
signs like this, people.
But you know what's even worse than this, Kim? Like passive aggressive signs is when the customer does it to us. So, oh, ooh, boy, that's kind of small, actually. I'm not sure if I'm going to be
It,
able to read that.
it's okay. I got it because I can blow it up.
Oh,
So
actually, I got it.
you got it.
I got it. I can read this. Okay. So it says I'm way in the back, and then the driver says, "Thank you. GPS sucks in these complexes sometimes. LOL." And then there's a picture of the food dropped off at the door. The customer follows that up with, "Are you interested in sex for money?" Driver responds with, what?" And the customer says, "Sorry, by mistake."
What was the customer actually expecting the DoorDash driver to say?
So, have you ever been hit up for anything that was a little less than above board, Kim? And not even necessarily like in this regard, just period.
Not in a, I mean, I've had like strange stuff happen. I mean, men and women. I've had women come to the door with really nothing on. I've had men come to the door with a robe open. Like, I've had some strange things like happen that I'm like, oh my God, here
So
you go.
the only time that I had somebody scantily clad was they didn't realize that their little kid, like little kid, had opened the door like a toddler, and like I show up and the kid is just standing there in an open door, and I'm like, "Hi, are your parents home?" And and I finally just kind of like reach into the door a little bit and knock, and the woman comes around. She's all like wearing lace and stuff, and she's like mortified, and she's like, "Oh my God, did you open my door?" I'm like, "No, little dude was standing there when I got here." So
There was one time, and it has nothing to do with how racy this is. I did deliver to a house, and it was pizza. And ever get it? So like if a customer opens their door and a dog runs out and all of a sudden like a dog's in front of you. Yeah, this is the opposite. The lady opened the door and her toddler grandson ran out and just started running down the street and
oh
didn't
no.
stop. And literally he just kept going. And I'm like, I didn't know what to do. I'm like, do I chase after the kid? He's not my kid. Like the grandmother just like took off, and now like here I am. I'm standing here with the pizza. It was handed to me, so I'm like, I'm just gonna leave it on the porch for you. Have a good day.
Don't tip
Like what
bait
do you
me.
do? I'm like, what do you do?
Yeah, no, it's bad enough when my freaking cat gets out. I couldn't imagine losing a kid.
Literally, kid like took off like running down the street like it was nothing.
Just hauled ass down the road, huh?
Just hauled. Like, granted, he
Wow.
didn't go in the street, and it was like suburbia USA. So I'll be honest, I wasn't afraid of the kid's safety. I was more like the kid just took off, like running down the sidewalk, just kept on going.
Yeah. So yeah, we've had some wild experiences. So
I feel like we can do like a whole show just on like really wild experiences. Call it like Money Hungry Diaries or something like that.
So to answer Chris's question, I'm not sure if they were taken from the same delivery. That definitely would have been interesting for sure. So have that sign up there and then get propositioned.
Can you imagine?
Man, that sounds like a wild block. Thomas, thank you so much, man. Appreciate you.
Thank you so much. So interesting. Very. We found these highly amusing when we were going through them.
Yeah, we're sitting there talking about this beforehand, like we're gonna get an email about this. So, all right, guys, I think that is going to about wrap it up for us for this evening.
Thank you, everybody, for being here. Thank you, Steve, Rideshare Rodeo, for joining us tonight. He is such a wealth of information. Hopefully, you guys got something out of it. Even though it's happening in Colorado, it very much easily could be happening in your own state, and what you can actually do in your own state for the stuff happening. So just beware. Find out what's, even if you don't know, even find out in Google what's happening in your own state, because something is happening probably in almost every state at this point. But thank you, Steve, for coming on here tonight.
Thank you, Steve. And we would like to thank all of you so much for joining us for episode number 6.
Wow, I can't believe it's 6 already. Can you?
I know, it's crazy. So thank you all so much for being here. And we'll be here next Wednesday at 5 p.m. Pacific, 8 p.m. Eastern. And we're looking forward to seeing you then.
Bye, everyone.
Take care.